निवासिनि विष्णुविलासिनि जिष्णुनुते.
In a gathering of American conservatives, which is no longer a fringe movement, as we've been told at very time, is certainly a government in waiting, as some people would like us to believe, and I think that's quite true, that in such a gathering, Indian conservatism or trends or political trends in India have entered the radar. And I think that's interesting in many ways, because the Anglosphere has hitherto been slightly wary of accommodating the conservative trends in either, say, Japan or Israel or even India into its fold. So that's a new trend, and I think it's a positive one. Now, when we approach the subject of why India sometimes doesn't get America, or why America also doesn't get India, it's curious, because on the face of it, the relationship between the two.
उसके लिए ना मैं राम माधव को दोष नहीं दूंगा, वो बॉडीड होना ही था, वो बॉडीड इसलिए नहीं हुआ कि उनका स्पीच खराब था, वो बॉडीड हुआ क्योंकि भोसरी के अब्दुल और वो एंटी जूइश लोग आ गए थे, इंडियन है, गाली देना है, इसलिए आए थे. मगर अगर सच में अगर वहां जैसा दीपक जैसा कोई होता तो उनके मतलब सेन अमेरिकन कंजर्वेटिव्स इतने कॉम्प्लीमेंट्स देते कि वो चूतियों के कमेंट्स ढक जाते, वो ढका नहीं, ये प्रॉब्लम है.
Democracy is actually as robust and vibrant as can be imagined. Okay, there are occasional points of friction, but compared to what the special relationship Israel has with the United States, the frictions are nowhere as profound or as marked.
Good question, Files. He's asking, what is your views on some states in US teaching 10 commandments and Bible in public school? I am with Amartya Sen on this one. I absolutely support it. अरे कुछ कल्चरल कोहिजन बिना कंट्री नहीं चल सकता है. हर कंट्री, हर लेजेंडरी किंगडम मैक्सिमम 100-200 साल चलता है. हर कोई जब पैदा होता है किसी किंगडम में, उसको लगता है कि अब तो ये तो हमेशा हमेशा के लिए चलेगा. राजा राम मोहन रॉय को भी लगा था ब्रिटिश तो भाई अब हमेशा रहेंगे, सबको लगा था. ये नहीं चलता है. यू शुड नॉट फक विद स्टेबल सोसाइटीज. कुछ कोहेरेंस चाहिए, और वो तो 10 कमांडमेंट्स सिखाएंगे. दे आर नॉट गोइंग टू प्रिवेंट यू फ्रॉम डूइंग एनीथिंग एनी टाइम सून. तो कुछ कोहिजन लाओ वापस. कुछ चुतिया, कुछ आइडेंटिटी नहीं है अमेरिकन आइडेंटिटी नाम का. ऐसा कैसे चल सकता है? अमर्त्य सेन भी यही बोलता है कि ब्रिटेन में ये डिफरेंट सिख स्कूल, हिंदू स्कूल, मुस्लिम स्कूल ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए. अगर तुम जाते हो तो कोई सेक्युलर स्कूल में जाओ, नहीं तो सबको क्रिश्चियन स्कूल में ही पढ़ना चाहिए कि वो, क्योंकि वो देश का आइडेंटिटी है. अब अमर्त्य सेन ये हिंदुओं के बारे में नहीं बोलेगा तो हम क्या करें? तो एज वैल्यूज ऑब्वियसली महाभारत रामायण शुड बी टॉट. वी शुड बी टीचिंग आवर किड्स इन द मॉरल साइंस क्लास. तो होता है मॉरल साइंस में चुतिया क्या सिखाता है, तो वहां पे सिखाओ राम कितने बड़े आदमी थे, महाभारत में कितने जीनियस मूव्स किए थे, ये सब सिखाना चाहिए.
Special relationship, I mean, I thought the special relationship was across the pond, but never mind. In the past, there has been a tendency on the part of the United States to view India purely through the lens of Whitehall. That was an old tradition. And for a long
Vignesh, what is ABCD? Just curious, from an ABCD perspective, why doesn't there exist a space libertarian conservatives in right-wing areas? What is ABCD perspective though? And what do you mean by when you say that there doesn't exist a space? You mean Indian right-wing space, right? Can you elaborate a little your question? Liberals want to begin with ground zero, and their ground zero means forgetting. Yes, the blank slate. What happened to the D'Souza guy? He's fully up and going. I mean, he's tweeting all day. Dinesh, ABCD is equal to American born. Confused they see. Oh, acha. There's another meaning in Bengali. All Bengal Changra department. I thought, why is he talking about that? So yeah, right wing doesn't exist in India. Yeah, pretty much. महाभारत के मिसरिप्रेजेंटेशन की वजह से ही बोल रहा था. कल की देखी क्या? अच्छा नहीं, मैंने नहीं देखा है. Vignesh, do you mean in the Indian context, right? Okay, there was another, I think, interesting comment. राजा राममोहन रॉय, अरे ठीक है, वो उनका एक्सक्यूज है कि वहां पे मतलब क्रिमेशन ग्राउंड नहीं था इसलिए बड़ी कर दिया. अब क्या करें? ठीक है, देख सुनते हैं.
time it was understood that the Brits perhaps understood India.
Here I disagree, Niner. I think it's only a matter of time. I was predicting this. These are the first let's say sparks of my prediction coming true. Okay, ये होना ही है. आफ्टर ऑल लोगों को समझ में आएगा कि भाई एक है सिविलाइजेशन, प्रो सिविलाइजेशन स्टेबल स्टेट, पेट्रियोटिज्म, कल्चर एटसेट्रा, एक साइड है पागला चोदा. The unity will have to happen between the sane pro civilization people. It's an inevitability, I'm arguing. See what happens.
A little better than the American.
Yeah, Vignesh, तो इंडिया में प्रॉब्लम है कि I'll blame everyone for this. So in India, the right wingers are not really right wingers. They just hate the left for hating Hinduism so much. That's mostly the Indian right wing. So there are a gradually fast growing number of libertarians in India, most of whom are fucking assholes, who absolutely hate India and Hinduism as well, who have absolutely no idea how to preserve a country. They don't even think a country or a culture needs to be preserved. And everything is about open trade. And when you say that, no, I'm against complete open trade, I am in favor of some amount of economic nationalism, they will call you a communist. Now, they usually call people like me lolbertarians, that I believe in some semblance of a culture for the country. And so I call them lolbertarians now. And people like me all call these stupid, dumb libertarians lolbertarians. Thank you, Bhupendra, for the donation. Let's listen to what Swapand Dasgupta is saying, then we'll get to Ram Madhav. দাদা তোমার মনের কথাটা বলার জন্য থ্যাংক ইউ। কোনটা? BRICS is a paper membership for neutrality. Switzerland is very much integrated into globalist economy.
Understood India. Whether that's true or not is debatable. But anyway, that was the conventional wisdom. Both countries, I would say, across the Atlantic and this side, however, didn't understand that there is a phenomena called Indian conservatism. For a very long time, it was believed that the political consensus in India veered around a loose sort of Fabian construct. And it was sort of determined by sort of upper class labor politicians with some occasional hint of conservatism coming in here and there.
This is actually a good speech. It's just that not fiery and rousing, that's all. It's a good academic speech.
Which Mr. Nehru epitomized. And Mr. Nehru had a certain aesthetic disdain for America, if you see whatever thing. He thought they were subtly crass.
Yeah.
And it was not a very unusual point of view. He reflected the conventional wisdom of the country houses of England at that time. However, this has changed quite a lot. There is a very vibrant, energetic, entrepreneurial Indian diaspora, which is there in the United States now, doing phenomenally well. If I'm told that I think they're giving the Jewish community a run for its money as far as the per capita income is concerned. But that may just be hearsay. However, the political influence of this community is still very, very patchy. It's still a relatively new community as far as America is concerned. It's there. More important, I think, as far as this community is concerned, which is broadly technocratic in nature, which is heavily concentrated in the professions, their exposure to Indian conservatism is skin deep, if at all. Now, what exactly do we mean when we're talking about Indian conservatism? What are the three cardinal principles? Firstly, unlike America, unlike various parts of Europe, in India, the term nationalism is not seen as a pejorative construct.
Was this speech before or after Ram Madhav? Ram Madhav said exactly this same point. Why was this such a significant point, and why were both of them saying this point? Didn't they discuss their speech amongst themselves? Kya ajeeb baat hai bhai.
It is seen also as something which embraces both sides of the political divide. So a large number of liberals too would actually say, oh, we are nationalists as well. The question is, whose nationalism is better? That becomes the thing. In the 19th century, when nationalism became a sort of a defining hallmark of India, it was often said, what was the main preoccupation? The main preoccupation of the nationalists at that time was asking the question, Why is an old and ancient civilization like India in a state of political subordination? Why has it lost its sovereignty? And this still hangs over the definition of Indian conservatism. Remember, my friend Ram Madhav will obviously elaborate at length about them. But I just want to say that there are three features of Indian conservatism which I think are very important in defining, in understanding it, in understanding the Modi government, in understanding the present currents in India.
ओ ये तो एडमंड बर्ग फाउंडेशन है, तो इन लोगों को तो स्वपन दासगुप्ता बहुत सालों से ही पहचान वाले होंगे, क्योंकि स्वपन दासगुप्ता आइडेंटिफाइज एज अ बर्कियन कंजर्वेटिव.
The first is the preoccupation with national unity, that India is one. The unionist argument, you might say, if I might use an American analogy, it's the unionist argument which is very, very important in that sense, that India is one and India is indivisible. The second issue which comes about as a result of that is the question of national identity. And this is very important because throughout the 19th and much of the early part of the 20th century, it used to be said that India is much of a nation as the equator. That India is just something which has been patched together as a geographical entity, and it's a contrived.
Yeah, it's a Hinduism doesn't exist. It's an ambiguous collection of disbanded, disparate principalities and castes and jatis, varnas. As a country, it's also the same, but Hinduism is so united that it's a majoritarian threat to minorities. At the same time, it's disunited. It's too disunited to have a name of its own, and it's so united that it's a threat at the fucking same time.
Contrived nationality. It's a contrived nationhood, that just like Hindus are made up of different conflicting sects, and James can tell you much more about the fact that to find a unifying theological trend in Hinduism is quite it's quite a challenging proposition. That how can this be an identity? And therefore, was this something which was a modern identity, which was created post-19th century, or has been an identity which has been existing in the past, and that it's not a political identity, it's a cultural identity?
And the answer for this complex question, we have an answer to this, some semblance of an answer, for just two people, because of two people, Bankim and Savarkar.
That's the point. And I think this cultural identity is something which is often missed out by a lot of people.
So God, allow me to disagree with you here. See, Varna is an inevitable thing. So Varna-based bad behavior is obviously unwanted, but you'll have to apply the Varna logic to everything. Whether you think of yourself as four Varnas in your personal life, that's an important thing to decide. But largely, people have to choose their fields. So Swapand Dasgupta is a Brahmin. You can't ask him to be a Kshatriya. So he gets called into the Kshatriya field, therefore he gets into it, but he's better off for these things. तो वो उसको मतलब काम में लगा कौन रहा है? That is the problem.
Who are looking at India from the outside. You mentioned the case of the citizenship laws, which are actually very similar to the law return. Exactly, it's exactly the same. And I was there in the select committee, which was there, which debated it, and the idea was that when it comes to religious persecution, this is important to point out. Religious persecution, Muslims don't get persecuted on religious grounds in an Islamic state. They may be persecuted for other reasons. Freedom of speech, economic reasons, there could be lots of them. I have a very good friend, Taslima Nasreen, from Bangladesh, who's been persecuted because what she writes is seen often as blasphemy. But those are rare. Most of them have been persecuted for other reasons. Whereas the persecution of Hindus in Afghanistan, there was a very considerable Sikh population in Kabul, which used to be the...
Good speech, guys. Good speech. Good speech. Not rousing, but at least informative and academic.
Moneylenders of Kabul at one time. Now, after the Taliban came and they've been turfed out, why have they been turfed out? Partly because they're Sikhs. I mean, you have a choice. You convert or depart. And under those circumstances, it is, I think, a natural obligation on the part of India to give them citizenship. And that, for example, I my family comes from what is now Bangladesh, which was East Pakistan at one time. Now, being a Hindu in Bangladesh is not a very happy situation to be in. And a large number of them have come over to India. Now, if they are denied that citizenship, or what was believed at one time to be a unified Indian state, that, to my mind, is wrong. So the question of national identity is very, very important. And finally, there's this question of national recovery and resurgence. And I think this is very important. The fact that you're sick of being in the third world.
What Bhupendra is saying here, this might be very true.
And there was a time when people used to celebrate and romanticize the third world. When I was a student and in the late 60s, that used to be a good sort of
cultures, colors, spirituality, yoga.
Leftist radical thing, third world first, stuff like that. People used to go to Nicaragua. I think Salman Rushdie went and wrote about the Jaguar smile, and Fidel Castro's posters quite the rage at that time. Well, it's no longer the case. I think people want facilities. They want a standard of living which is comparable to the first. Well, we haven't got there. It'll probably take a long time to get there. But at least as far as infrastructure is concerned, as far as facilities is concerned, I think I would say, having landed at JFK, that our airports in India are far, far superior. I can that I think somewhere the development of infrastructure got stuck after the New Deal in America. Well,
it's
the
true.
point is a latecomer does have advantages.
Yeah.
And I think it's got to be understood that a lot of the impulses in India, political impulses of India, stem from this desire that we will no longer be patronized, we will no longer be looked down upon, that we won't only sell the idea of a 1,000-year Buddha, which can sell a lot of mystics over and it'll give employment to people in Cambridge.
Yes.
Apart from selling yogi.
Nina, to be honest, no one gives a shit about him. In BJP circles, he's respected. Outside, not many people know about him. Even if they know about him, they don't just care. I mean, the commies, which is the most of Bengal.
Yogis and gurus and things like that. There is another India.
Nice.
At one time, Indians used to be thought, they were looked upon as, in the 70s, when you used to go to Heathrow, you would be told that, the sweepers are Indian. Now, I think here you come across and you find that this is the CEO of Google is an Indian. So we've moved a little bit from there. So the idea is that your aspiration and your political impulses have suddenly converged at the point where conservatism, where taking into account the inheritance of India, what your identity is, what your cultural roots are, it's not cosmopolitanism. And that's where the fault line in India is. Between those who see development as being part of the globalizing impulses of the world, and those who see progress in terms of also depending on who you are. That your identity as Indians are very, very important. And this is something which is occasionally not understood. The cultural...
in their hearts, maybe, but in real terms, no. And now, it seems like that desperation for false equivalence, but I hope you understand that I'm not meaning it just that way, because the thing I'm about to mention from the Indian side is in way lesser degree, which is that Hindu Indians in general don't have a problem with Christianity or Christians, but they do have a skepticism, maybe a healthy amount of skepticism for the white West and stuff like that. Most of it is baseless because the real problem they don't often get. So all I'm saying is that both people on some grounds hate each other, but the time that we are living in now, there both people are about to realize our choices are civilization, nationalism, patriotism, culture on one side, and Pagla Chodamo on the other side. Which will we choose? Which will American right-wingers choose? Because the enemy is the same. That is the most important part.
Pride which goes in. So, one of the biggest fault lines which there in the United States, and I think this is the cause of a lot of friction between Indian and American conservatives, is the question of religion. What is considered anathema in India and a great source of abhorrence is the idea that you should convert. Now, the idea of conversion does not exist in Hinduism. So you must realize that.
Fuck. This is a ballsy move. देखो भाई, इसके लिए तो स्वपन दासगुप्ता को क्रेडिट देना पड़ेगा. इसने क्रिश्चियन कंजर्वेटिव्स के सामने जाके कन्वर्जन का बात भी छेड़ दिया. ये बहुत क्रेडिट का काम है. ये हार्श ट्रूथ है, उनको सुनना पड़ेगा. सुनने के बाद एक्सेप्ट करना पड़ेगा कि फिर भी भाई एनिमी कॉमन है. ये बढ़िया काम किया है स्वपन दासगुप्ता ने. He is kind of saying that, see, we are such a better religion that we don't even have conversion. This is good shit.
It doesn't exist. You're born a Hindu, you die a Hindu. You may believe in it, you may not believe in it, but you still. The Hindu umbrella incorporates people who are atheists. So it's a cultural phenomenon. So when this evangelical movement is being spread, funded from the United States, it creates a lot of friction, particularly when it is accompanied by a form of rhetoric which thinks of Hinduism or the Hindu customs, faith, etc., as something primitive, barbaric.
My respect for Swapand Dasgupta just went up 2-3 degrees, because अगर हमको कोई यूनिटी करना है, वो सब तो ये सब क्लैरिफाई करने के बाद ही. ये सब अंडर द कारपेट छुपा के यूनिटी का फायदा नहीं है. स्वपन दासगुप्ता took the bull by its horns. Brilliant stuff.
And not worthy of consideration in the 21st century. And I think this is an issue which I think requires some dialogue and understanding. And I would like people who are involved, and I understand that the cultural identity, the cultural underpinnings of the United States is to a very, very large extent Judeo-Christian. This is something.
तो appeasement खेल गए भाई. प्रोटेस्टेंट देश को फिर से ये भी जुडियो क्रिश्चियन बोल ही दिए. ठीक है, अब क्या करें?
Which I think it didn't require Samuel Huntington to point it out, but he did point it out, and it is something which we accept, that there is a cultural root, just as in the United Kingdom, I still believe that the Anglican Church, or at least the Anglican Church which once existed, was a very important point in defining what that identity was. Likewise, it's important to realize that what is in India is that there is a large cultural underpinning. It's not.
No, I did not mean that they don't know about conversion. I'm saying Swapand Dasgupta's bringing this up is a very significant thing, because he's opposing it. And in fact, saying that it's such a lowly thing that we don't even do it. That is very significant. And especially what he just said, that it's okay. USA has its Judeo-Christian culture. British people have their Anglican church culture. We have our Hindu culture. And we'll all have to get along, because the enemy is the same. That is the underpinning here. And this is a very significant and very important start, a very good way to start this collaboration between the world conservatives. Good shit by Swapand Dasgupta. Nice.
Exclusive. It's not exclusively, let me point it out, that there is a very important Islamic input there. There's a very important Sikh input there. There are other inputs there. In southern India, there's an important Christian input there. But by and large, don't forget that the underpinnings of our civilization, our culture, our identity is what we might loosely call Hindu. And that when you confront this theologically, you are actually creating a rift which sometimes becomes.
No, I don't think Vivek was going to take any cabinet position anyway. I would be surprised if he did. At best, it was VP, but even then, VP is a fucking nobody's job. I thought he might take it because of the name and stuff. I guess Vivek had said this all along, that I'm not a very good number 2 person. I work best, I function best when I'm at the top. So at best, if he had become a VP, he would not have any real powers. He would be just Trump's attack dog. So attack dog he can be anyway without being VP. He's going to go on with his 4-year campaign now. ये बंदा तो रुकने नहीं वाला है. उसका अब 4 साल पूरा इलेक्शन कैंपेन चलेगा, तुम देखते रहो.
Unbreachable. I believe there is a natural alliance and understanding which treats conservatives of the United States, the United Kingdom, and India. And that understanding is just growing.
Nice.
That awareness is growing. There's no, India, we didn't really have something called conservatism for a very long time. I remember in my Twitter handle in 2009, I put, by instinct, a conservative. Most people say, what is that? What exactly is that? What do you mean? Are you one of those who wants to go back to, the 18th century in terms of your custom? So that was a certain stereotype which existed.
Interestingly, Kaladin, I think you are, both of your statements, the first part is not correct, but the second part is correct. I'm saying it is going to happen, but it will also become harmful to us. Because after that war is done, they will come for conversions again. तो हमको उसको भी रोकना पड़ेगा. अभी का प्रॉब्लम तो पहले सॉल्व करें ना.
Glad to say that those stereotypes don't exist any longer. But a formal relationship, a formal communication, understanding, dialogue, conversation, which involves people of the right in the UK, in US, Australia, New Zealand, the Anglosphere, as it were, the Commonwealth, you can call it, whichever one to call it, Japan, Israel, this is overdue. And I think there are issues, which is not that we will necessarily agree with everything. That is why there's something called a national conservative thing. It is national or it is nothing. What Disraeli once said, conservative is either national or it's nothing. And that national part is very, very important. But above all, I think there is that commonality which we need to explore. And I hope when you'll have your regime change in November, this process of trying to understand.
This is very significant, guys. An Indian nationalist going and openly saying, and with a positive smile, that yes, we expect your nationalists to come to power as well. These are the beginning small baby steps and nuggets of a united global right. It's happening, guys. And this is a very good start by Swapand Dasgupta. I think it was kind of spoiled by Ram Madhav.
Because, like you, we have often been called the stupid party. Just like you all are being looked down and the objects of tremendous amount of liberal condescension, what the Ivy League does to you, we've been subjected to exactly the same thing. I went to rather elite institutions, and I often get, there's a sort of alumni network which is there in WhatsApp, and you often get, they're just petrified of what's happening in America. Someone is ill, and therefore the country, therefore the entire regime is falling apart. The whole country is falling apart. It's the end of civilization as we know it. Well, I hope it'll be the end of that civilization as we know it, and there'll be a better civilization. Thank you very much.
Very, very important speech. If not rousing or powerful, if not inspiring, I won't listen to this while working out, but this was an important beginning. Good stuff.
जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनी